take you all in. It's so wonderful to be here always. And my intention is to share and to give. And my topic today is compassion in action and making sense of the solar eclipse. I'm going to be talking about that a little bit later in the talk. But first, let's talk about compassion in action. Now, I'm going to give a different spin on it, so just be prepared, fasten your seatbelts. I mean, we've heard about compassion all our lives. Compassion, what is that? Let's go a little bit deeper today. I have your permission, I know, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you've heard this story before. I've noticed that this has become a theme in my life. It's also in my book. It's my mom's definition of compassion and love. My mom was a social worker. She worked in Kansas City, Missouri. And she was a career social worker, so she was in the field for 30 years. And she worked with everybody. I mean, she worked with pregnant teens. She worked with the homeless population. She worked with schizophrenics. She worked with all kinds of people. And she would come home and tell these stories to me, a teenager, and I could care less. Because I wanted to be an actress, and I didn't care about social work. And, you know, when you're a teenager, your mom doesn't know much. So I was 14, and she'd come home and she'd tell me stories like, oh, you know, this happened and that happened. One night she was on call and her beeper went off. She came in my bedroom, it's probably about 11 o'clock at night. She says, I'm gonna have to go to the hospital. One of my clients punched out his wife, and the wife is in the hospital, the kids are in child welfare, and I'm gonna go to the hospital to see her. I think he's in jail, bless his heart. And I was like groggy, and I said, what do you mean, Mom? Don't you mean bless her heart? She's the one in the hospital. And she said, no, bless his heart. She said, nobody grows up when they're a little kid and says, I want to hurt the ones that I love the most. Nobody does that. He's not himself. He doesn't even like the person he's become. So if I'm supposed to help him get better, I've got to see him the way he was created to be. I've got to see him the way God created him. And unless I see him that way, I can't help him. So it starts with a blessing, she told me, to him. And I didn't get that at 14. And I'm going to talk to you today about why I didn't get that at 14. And why that doesn't make sense to a lot of people. Because compassion, you have to be on the wavelength of God to initiate compassion and to also feel compassion. So what does that mean? That means that my mom was on a wavelength. God was sending out a transmitter signal saying you need to love the people that are the most unlovable, because that's what I do. So this is how God loves, and he's always sending out that energy for us to do the same. But if we're not on the same wavelength, we can't pick up on that information. It sounds ridiculous. So what we do, if we're not on that wavelength, is we get on the wavelength of the pain. And we start doing the blame game. And we say, well, he's a bad guy. He's horrible. And how have we tuned into that? Because most people are tuned into that lower vibrational wavelength. And on that wavelength, nothing gets better. Because what you're doing is you're just feeding it back and feeding it back. And you get hooked onto other people's pain. You never speak to their pain. You speak to who they are. And who they are is vibrating high above their pain, their situation. their trauma. So my mom had to see that person as healed already.
Wow.
So we're powerful creators, people. So what we say and what we think and what we tune into, guess what? That's what we create. So if you want to create wholeness and health in another person, you speak it to them, you see it in them, way before they see it in themselves. Now that's deep. This is how the world changes. But we can't see the pain always. We have to rise above the pain and see them the way they were created to be. Caitlin said that love is all there is. But if we believe that pain is all there is, we're going to speak to pain in our lives instead. If we believe chaos is all there is, we're going to talk about that chaos all day long. We're going to watch the news and we're going to repeat that chaos to everybody else we see. Because why? We're vibrating at a different level. We're not vibrating at a level that can change the chaos. So you don't speak of the chaos, you speak of the possibility. And what God is nothing but endless possibility, infinite possibility. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now, how do we do this? Because if everybody did this, the world would be a totally different place. So there must be a reason why we're not speaking at this vibrational level. The reason is because it starts with us. It starts with us cleaning our filter and tuning our radio signal to the divine radio signal. And there's a lot of blockages that can happen, and that's why we don't get a clear signal. And that's why sometimes it seems ridiculous to us, and we don't do it. It takes a brave soul to go against the status quo. It takes a brave, courageous person to speak health in a room full of people that are talking about their medications and their procedures and all of that kind of stuff. Because people get high on their victimization. You know this. That's why they continue to talk about their suffering. They want your sympathy, and then they get a little boost, an energy boost. What I know to be true is if you speak to their pain, nothing happens. You're not changing their environment. You're not changing their attitude. You're not giving them something different. But when you speak to who they truly are and you widen their view of themselves, it may not change overnight, but you have planted a seed, and that seed can grow in an environment of encouragement. Does that make sense? So we've got to start with ourselves, the blockages. We've got to have a pure heart. I want to go a step further, and I want to give you a little bit of metaphysics. When you change yourself, when you remove those blockages, when you're attuned to the divine transmitter and that divine voice that's always speaking what is true, love is all there is, when you tune into that, you go to a different dimension. I'm seeing some heads go like this. We go to a different dimension when you're on that level. And so when you're on a different dimension, you have the ability to bring another person up to a different dimension. If you are staying on their dimensional level, their vibratory level, nothing changes. So what I've just said is that you are a wizard, that you are God, because you can create miracles in somebody's life by changing your vibration. Being around them will help them go to another dimensional level. Now, what do I mean by another dimensional level? You've heard that we talk about abundance here, that God is all there is, He wants us to be abundant, blah, blah, blah. That only happens on a certain dimensional level. It does not happen in the lower frequencies. And if it does happen in the lower frequencies, it doesn't give the well-being and the joy that happens on an the dimensional level of God. Someone that is used to pain and violence tells me something. It tells me that they are in an environment of pain and violence, and they don't have somebody on a certain dimensional level to have that example and to be around them, speak encouragement to who they truly are. And so they have not been brought to another dimensional level that does not include the violence and the pain. Look at your own environment. Look and see if people are in abundance, if they're joyful, if they're well. And instead of blaming them, ask yourself, what blockages do I need to clear in myself, not the other person, in myself, in order to bring that dimensional level up? Not only for me, but everybody around me. Wow. That's how the world changes. I have a visual of a mall. There are multi-levels in this mall. Have you ever been on maybe the middle or the top level? And you're by the railing and you can see other people on the lower level. This is kind of how it is. There are people suffering in the world. There's no question about it. They're at a lower vibration. When you see them, your reaction is not to blame, not to name call, but to have compassion because that was you. And then you ask yourself, what do I need to do internally in my spiritual life so that I can bring as many people on this level as I possibly can? So your reaction to the news is compassion in action. You see the person the way they were created to be, rather than what is presented on the screen. You are not a garbage disposal. You are a world changer, and it starts with us. So this is the true meaning of compassion in action. It is having so much compassion for another person that's suffering that you go within yourself and say, how can I come up higher? Because when I do, they do too. Wow. We should probably have an amen after that. Amen, amen, amen. Let's see what Ernest Holmes says about this, because he does write about our powerful nature and how we can influence by changing ourselves, not only the people in our immediate circle, but the globe on a global scale. So this is from his book, Living the Science of Mind, and it's in the chapter that says, you are a spiritual broadcasting station. And metaphors and all these things are so important because it helps us visualize something that is intangible. So the broadcasting station. We are all broadcasting stations, whether or not we know it. Our thoughts, feelings, and emotions, our faiths and fears tend to make an imprint on our environment. We are also receiving sets, but it does not follow that we must tune into every program being broadcast. When we want to listen to a certain program, we tune our radios to its wavelength. The program already is within the ether in the room, but it does not affect our instrument until we tune into it. It is fascinating to think that we are both mental broadcasting stations and receiving sets. And it's even more wonderful when we learn to broadcast only the kind of messages that we wish to have in return. Now that's deep. So if you're spreading judgment, fear, what are we going to get in return? Only what we put out. If you're putting out encouragement and that love is all there is, and yeah, I see that, but yeah, that person is blah, 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 and put a positive affirmation there, then that's also what we're going to get back. We don't realize how powerful we are. Once you know this knowledge, you can't speak the same way. You can't think the same way as you used to because everything is going to come back, whatever you're putting out. So if a person's mind is filled with animosity and resentment, people will feel it, whether or not they say a word. This animosity arouses within others who have resentment and animosity a feeling like his own. His thoughts tune into theirs, and theirs immediately respond to flowing back into him. One actuates the other. And you've seen that when you've been in situations where people are not healed, and then they're in a group of people that don't know who they are, and then the words and the conversation goes to a negative, it comes back. It is the strong person that is tuned to something that has done the inner work that can change even that environment. On the other hand, if you're surrounded by people who have resentment and animosity, but you have none, you will not tune in. Their vibration bypasses you, and their antagonism does not arouse an equal antagonism in you because you are not broadcasting on the same mental wavelength. He also gives an analogy of a person that is angry and fearful. Inside of them, what they do is they pick up a brick and they throw it at you. Mentally, thought-wise, verbally, that's what they do. What they want or what they expect is that you'll pick up the brick and throw it back at them. But when you've done the work, the inner work, and you've released your fear and trauma, you don't pick up the brick. You just let it fall. And you go on with your wavelength that's at a higher frequency. And you've disrupted theirs. Now to some people that might say, wait a minute, that's pretty passive. No. You're in the frequency of the divine who sees that person and loves that person that picked up the brick. Because you're in that frequency, guess what? You love them too. You're not separate. When you're vibrating at the frequency of the divine, in Kabbalah, they call that equivalency of form. You are the same as God. When you're vibrating, let me say that again. When you are vibrating at the frequency of love, you are love. When you are vibrating at the frequency of compassion, that other person will feel that as different than what they've experienced in the past. And they have now experienced the frequency of God through you, as you. That's how the world changes. So one of the things that we have to remember is that I'm not saying that there aren't horrific things going on, chaos forming, events going on. But we have to always remember that we can't be hooked to the pain. We can't be slaves to the pain, to the blame game, to the repeating of the chaos. We have to always remember that there is freedom from that. We don't have to be hooked to it. This song, this first song really explains that. And if you listen to the words, he's talking about the pain that he experiences, but he also reminds himself that there's freedom when you release from the pain and go towards love. I don't want to stand up here and say, that life is great and there are no problems in the world. That song epitomizes, there's a lot of pain. And it's a struggle to go within yourself and say, oh my gosh, I'm hurting. Where does this come from? How do I love people that I've been taught since I was little that there's always got to be a bad guy and there's always got to be a good guy. There's always this polarization. This is a struggle. I'm not saying don't look at it. I'm saying please look at it within yourself Heal that within yourself that tells you there has to be a bad guy and there has to be a good guy, because God doesn't think that way. God is not interested in polarizations. He sees the pain and he loves everybody, whether it's the police officer that shot somebody or the person that was shot in the family that's grieving afterwards. He loves them the same. They are equal. That's what that song is reminding us, that we have to remember we could be free as long as we're not a slave to the pain. We need to love our enemy like our brother. And is it easy? No. If it was, the world would be so much better. It's not easy. But we know better now. Like Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better. You can't unhear this. So it's got to sink into every pore of your body. And then after it does, there will be tests. There will be tests coming into your life where you will have to make a choice. Am I going to go back to the old paradigm of polarization? Or am I going to embrace even something that my gut tells me I shouldn't? And remember, your gut is just your training. Sometimes. And tune into the frequency of God, which is different than the training you got on this planet. Now, speaking of planets, we can talk about the solar eclipse that is coming up. August 21st of this year. It'll be the first time in our lifetime that it's coming to the United States and going to make a diagonal across the country, which is very exciting. And as you know, it's the total blockage of the sun that takes place during the daytime. So we will have a darkening of the sky. And I want to talk about the spiritual meaning, which has to do with what we've been talking about. That there is a change. I want you to visualize that mall where you have different levels on this mall. And let's say you're in the middle, you've been doing some inner work, or you're on the top, wherever you are. What is happening at this particular time is that the energies are coming together so that if you have some higher learning and some higher vibration going, you're going to go higher. You're going to increase your knowledge, increase your wisdom. Things are going to come to you that is going to make sense to you on a deep level, if it hasn't already, because the energies have already started coming. So what am I saying? I'm saying that when I was talking about tuning in to God's voice, to God's knowing, to the way God thinks, this is happening now, and it is culminating in the solar eclipse. And then when the solar eclipse happens, it will continue. So you will see people that have greater wisdom. What you'll also see is a little more chaos. So I want you to be prepared. There's going to be a little bit more chaos, but guess what? You're not tuned into the chaos. That's why I'm giving this talk to you now. So to prepare yourself, spiritually, vibrationally, you're attuned to God. There's going to be a lot of chaos on the news and things like that, and your friends may be repeating that chaos, but you're going to be vibrating at a different frequency. You're going to be on the mall level that's a little bit higher, and you're going to show them compassion, and you're going to greet them with encouraging words, and you're going to speak to them because you know who they are. They may not know, but you know who they are. So you're going to come from that strength and that wisdom. So that's why it's so important to do your inner work now. You have the help of the universe. And there are some spiritual teachers that are more attuned to this energy that I'm talking about. I'm pointing to you over here. That know what I'm talking about, that can pick this apart even further. But I'm just giving you an overview that this is a very exciting time to be alive. You have the help of the universe, these energies that are coming through right now. And so I want you to spend some time in solitude, with a journal, in meditation, And just know that you're getting downloads of information. And you may even feel this as a protection around you. A big hug you may feel. Be out in nature to take advantage of this time. So your response to the chaos is compassion. Your response to the chaos is only what you're feeling from the divine to say and to think. Ridding yourself of the polarization. During this time, we need your whole heart. So if there are any blockages in your whole heart, you're going to need your whole heart to respond to your friends, your environment, and the chaos that's going to happen. Does that make sense? So you need your whole heart, your whole loving heart. If I was doing Spirituality 101, I talk about forgiveness. We're past that. You've already forgiven all the people in your life. We're on to the next level. We're on to changing the world that is chaotic and going to get more chaotic. And we need your whole heart. So this next song, listen to the words. I think that it'll speak to this as well. So basically, we need our whole hearts. We need to be exactly what God created us to be. We're individuals, but we're the same. We have gifts that need to come forth now. If I had a siren, I would do a siren. But this is like now, you know. We don't have years to do spiritual work and growth and healing. I mean, I'm a therapist, and some people will have a client for years. We don't have time. The world needs us now to be our whole heart. So any blockages, any unforgiveness, all of that kind of thing, whatever's holding you back from being the exact attunement to what God created, we need it now. The world needs it now. It's not a time to look on TV and say, oh, you know, they're doing this and they're... No, what am I doing? Am I being my whole self? That's what the focus is on now. Because that's what the world needs, is our healing. Our healing. So important right now.